Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Levine. I am a ancient art historian and a person who studied ancient studies. And given the huge success of um, the film The Odyssey, I'm inspired to share with you my reading of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the book and then give a little bit of commentary on it. I'm just going to do this very extemporaneously. So I'll see how it goes. So I'm going to begin with chapter 1. Here we go. I'm sorry, the glasses will look a bit crooked and academic. No worries. Sing to me, man, muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again off course once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy. Many cities of men he saw and learned their minds. Many pains he suffered, heartsick on the open sea, fighting to save his life and bring his comrades home. But he could not save them from disaster, hard as he strove. The recklessness of their own ways destroyed them all, the blind fools. They devoured the cattle of the sun, and the sun god wiped from sight the day of their return. Launch out on his story, muse, daughter of Zeus. Start from where you will. Sing for our time too. That's a good place to stop. Talk about it. Just a little tiny paragraph. So I can pull this off my face now and just talk about the book. So first off, these poems begin with invocations to the muse, who are the goddesses of poetry. So right away, it's an address from the poet, the speaker, to these goddesses to like inspire them and tell them what to say. So he says, sing to me about the man muse. He's telling the muse to tell him what to say. And he says again, launch out on this story, muse, and start wherever you want. Sing for our time too is an interesting choice as well, because the story is told in many different ways. There's been a lot of critique how the well, first of all the translations are a little bit different and they give a different flavor, but how the book, let's say, how the text, Homer's text, is different from what comes up in the movie. But of course, I think Nolan is trying to make a movie for our time, for our people, and he focuses on like kind of like the woundedness of people in battle, people who face destruction and death and loss and the psychological impact. And that's in here too. You're going to hear that in here, maybe a little bit different, but Nolan's focus is for our time, right? He, big complaint is how he has casted Helen as a Black woman, or Black woman as Helen. But so what? Like, then people would complain, this is a very white story. He went with trying to cast everyone like they're Greeks. And I think the idea, of course, is they're from all different polises and, well, all different places, let's say. I'm not sure if polis is quite the word I would use, like pre-polis, maybe. But again, let's go back to the beginning. So, the poet, the person reciting this poem out loud, which is how these poems would have been told. Homer, and question is, did Homer exist? But we'll skip that for now. But the Homer, we'll just call him Homer for now. Homer, who is reciting this poem out loud, was the first person to kind of get his text written down in a particular format. And instead, these stories would have been told orally by these bards, by these storytellers who would perform these stories to a lyre, to music. So in fact, it would have probably been more like a giant sung song. And they have shown that people can memorize texts. Millman and Parry have shown that people can memorize texts of great length like this and recite them. They did some studies in Yugoslavia, but that's besides the point. Anyway, there would have been someone who comes around to recite these particular poems. And, people love to hear about heroic exploits and gods and their relatives, and people love to hear their own connections in these stories. So these storytellers might actually alter or change the poems a little bit deliberately. So even the written texts that we have, um, there were variations of it almost that existed until an Athenian tyrant decided he wanted one version. He wanted to know the original Homeric version, and he sort of created it. His name was Pisistratus, but we can, again, not really relevant, and I feel way off topic. Let's stick to the book. So anyway, the person who's speaking this poem is saying, Goddess, inspire me wherever you want and however you want. But the story should be about this man who is a man of twists and turns. And not only is he twist and turned, let's say in his mind, Odysseus is clever. He's smart. He's intelligent. He is the guy who's the thinker in the whole group. All of these individuals who participated in the Trojan War, they really have very different personalities. I read them a particular way. Different people read and show them in different ways. Just as an example, the leader of the expedition against Troy, Agamemnon, to me, he's like this big blustering guy who's very quickly kind of like derailed, and he needs someone to kind of like maybe like smooth his ego or tell him, you know what, you're doing okay, Agamemnon. You can keep this up. And he's like, yes, I can. Like he's got like a little bit of a sensitivity issue where he kind of goes to pieces every now and then. But then ultimately, he almost always chooses to do the right thing. At first, he has this big, explosive temper towards things. And he's like, but wait, I've got to rein this in and do the right thing. So anyway, Agamemnon's not often portrayed that way, but that's how I read him in books like the Iliad. Anyway, all of these people in the Trojan War have characters, and Odysseus, he's the brains of the operation. He's the smart one. He comes up with really clever schemes in how to do things, and he'll lie, he'll break the rules. He's like a very fun person. So it's kind of, he is a man of twists and turns. His mind is constantly working. And it's not a surprise that he's the one who gets driven off course as well. Not only is his mind all over the place, but so too will his journey home be not direct. And this journey takes place, of course, after the city of Troy has been defeated by the Greeks. But in the things that he does, it says, many cities of men he saw and learned their minds. Odysseus is someone who takes in new information. So his journey, he wants to go home, but he's also like an explorer. He's curious. He wants to see what's out there in the world. But of course, if you do that, no learning comes without suffering. Many pains he suffered, heartsick on the open sea, fighting to save his life and bring his comrades home. So there is this idea that knowledge comes at a cost. And my best counter for this comes from a different set of myths, the Norse myths, let's say. Odin, who was like the leader, kind of the equivalent of the Zeus of the Norse myths, the Allfather. Odin wants to be wise, and to be wise, he trades away an eye to gain wisdom. He throws his eye into a well as payment for the wisdom that he gains from that well. So knowledge comes at suffering. You will grow in your intelligence, in your experiences, but it's always at a cost. Odysseus suffers a cost. And Odysseus, very interesting, is very set on bringing home the people who have gone with him to Troy. Unfortunately, only Odysseus is going to be the one of his group that makes it back. He's going to try. And, it tells you right now what happened to them. They did something really reckless. They took the cattle of the sun god. They ate the god's property. big, big no. You don't do that. And so once they did that, they sealed their own fate by making that choice. But Odysseus is somehow going to overcome that. And of course, maybe all of that knowledge is what saves him. Anyway, this is my little opener on the Odyssey. I'm going to try and do a little bit more of it today. This is my Banff mug. By the way, I have a coffee mug from many different places that I have been to. Anyway, talk to you soon.